But it's a great time of year to get started for the upcoming growing season. And I wasn't sure how to do this, so I'm going to start with as if we're beginning a new vegetable garden or flower bed, and then also include work on existing beds. There's a lot of similarities once you get going, and when starting new or beginning the new season on an established bed. If you're starting a new vegetable garden, the location is important, as it needs pretty close to 6 hours of sunlight a day for your plants. There's very few vegetables that will grow and produce fruit with less than 6 hours of sunlight. Now, it doesn't all have to be in one stretch, the 6
Can you hear
hours.
me?
Are you able to hear me? So if there's a big tree in the way or an apartment building that shades your garden in the middle of the day, you get sun in the morning, later in the afternoon. As long as it comes up about 6 hours for vegetables, you're pretty good. As far as a new flower bed, if you're not getting 6 hours of sun or you're getting more shade, you just end up planting different types of flowers in that bed, and it'll still be quite successful. And the weather this time of year will allow us to get started on the work for new plots and any preparations for the existing beds. Now, even though the soil isn't warm enough to maybe plant some things, as long as it's dry enough to work, you're able to get going on your work. So starting a new bed, you picked your location, and now start the new growing area. If it's on the ground, you'll need to remove all the existing vegetation, whether it's grass or weeds or something else. So first, turn over all the existing vegetation, unless you want to try scraping it off or something, but turning it over and breaking it up with a shovel, and then cultivating it, loosening it up in the clumps to remove any of the grasses and weeds and roots. And while you're at it, any other foreign substance items like stones, tree roots, pieces of metal, depending what area you're in, bricks, cement, who knows? Hopefully you're not in some area where you're going to run into a dead body, but anyways, cover it up, move locations. Don't tell anybody. But then after you've been walking all over your soil, cleaning it all up and getting all the roots and weeds out of it, you'll tamp it down again. So I'll have to go over it and work it up again, loosen it up, and then break it out level, and you're pretty much ready to start to plant vegetables or flowers or whatever else you want to plant. Now, alternatively, if you're going to be growing in an area in raised beds, lay out your area, place your walls, maybe not permanently, but certainly place them, and then turn over all the existing vegetation within the walls. It helps by breaking that up, the surface. It helps with drainage throughout the year, throughout the summer. You're not having a mat of grass or weeds or something underneath. You don't necessarily have to remove all that plant material, but turn it over and it'll be a lot nicer. And then fill the beds with your soil or whatever other medium you're using. And again, you're pretty much ready to start. Raised beds, you're not usually as wide a bed, so you're not usually in there walking all over it to tamp it down. One thing with raised beds, before you start, look around and check for any problems that may occur, that the bed that's going to stop the flow of water or any other drainage in your own yard or from your neighbors or into your neighbors or anything like that. You could have quite a backup of water if you're not careful. Many of the newer subdivisions, it's been all engineered and graded just for that purpose, for the water to flow from yard to yard and yard to yard to a main drain or kind of low area. And if you build a dam, it's not going to work. If you're growing root vegetable crops, make sure that the soil, whether it's on the ground or a raised bed, that it's loose and free of a lot of foreign objects, at least as deep as the roots of the vegetable you're growing. Carrots can get kind of long, and if they come across a stone or a twig, or you're going to get some funny shaped carrots. They're still good eating, it's just they're not going to look very nice. So then that's pretty much it for the new bed, to get it ready and ready for planting. But on existing beds, if it's been growing plants there last year, it's going to need some spring cleanup. It didn't get too much done last fall. Tops of perennial plants, if you're in the flower beds or even in perennial vegetables, asparagus comes to mind. Trim down the tops to the recommended height, and that's going to vary whether they're peonies or whether they're I don't know what there is, a sedum or daisies or whatever else. They're all going to be at a little different height, and clean up some of the dead leaves. Here I see our daylilies are coming up, and we should actually be in there pulling out all the kind of the old dead leaves that were around, breaking them out from last year. Even though it might have got raked, there's still some more to be raked out. And then remove any of the remains of any annual plants that were grown in those beds as well. Your petunias and marigolds, or whether they were tomatoes or pepper plants or something like that, or even bean plants. Get them all cleaned up. Most of that stuff can probably be composted if you're doing that. And then as you're taking the tops off and whatnot, then you start to do some cultivating, some digging and cultivating, removing any of the early weeds that have started to grow or early grasses that have gotten in by chance. And if it's and of course that's if it's dry enough, and then make it loose, make that ground loose for this year's planting. And rake it over, and might have had water running through from the downspouts just by chance, and you might have to do some raking and maybe even adding a little bit of soil here and there. If the area that you're working on had existing mulch, you may have to move some of that around a little bit to get at some of these plants that have grown up through it. But now's not too bad of a time to loosen up your existing mulch a little bit and smooth it out so if it's even, if that's what you want, and also remove any weed seeds that blew in that started to grow and blew into the mulch over the winter, the fall, and everything else. And as Jane was saying before we all started, she's been spreading mulch already. So if that's the way you garden, then she knows what she's already doing it. So yes, now's the time to do it before it gets hot. Now you should look around and what kind of soil have you got that you're working with. There's three main groups: sand, silt, and clay. Most of the stuff around these areas are going to be a sand or a clay. And then of course there's loam, which is a mixture of the three main groups in different quantities depending where you happen to be. The knowledge of the soil and the composition of the organic matter that's in it, as far as moisture retention, it's helpful when you're going to select your plants. And if it comes to it, any soil amendments to match them together so that they work better. If you're concerned about the chemical makeup of the soil, especially on a new plot, now would be a good time to do a soil test. If it is if you don't want to do a soil test, then a year or two, your whatever you've been planting will pretty well tell you when there's a problem with the soil. If it's not growing well, then you may have to add something. You can. Then in your existing beds, you'll have to rely on your memory as to how the plants performed in the last couple of years there. Soil tests you can find, there are some at some of the garden centers. You can find a soil test, a home soil test, and do it yourself. And otherwise, there are places that will do quite more extensive ones. I understand there's a couple in Guelph. I think there's one at the university, and there must be one someplace else. You'd have to do some investigating and searching as to find out where to go and costs involved and that type of stuff. There can be some problems if you are into the soil and digging and cultivating too soon, or if it's too wet. Clay is a good example of that. If you're digging in it and cultivating it when it's too wet, you'll start to get clumps. And then the sun will come out and bake it hard, just like a pot. And it will take the freezing and thawing cycles of next winter to break that up properly and get back to something that is workable as clay can be. I'm on clay here, and there's been a couple times in certain little areas in the garden when I've started to work and push the envelope a little too much, and I paid for it for the rest of the year. It gets a little, it's hard to cultivate. It's like cultivating in a gravel pit. Soil amendments, you may not have to add any. You may want to add some, but again, either just knowing or waiting a few growing seasons to get an idea. Some things it's not going to hurt if you put it in anyways. Organic amendments, they can be mixed into any kind of soil, and it's not going to really cause too many problems. And some of the organic amendments you could use as a mulch after the seedlings have come up. For instance, your vegetable garden, once the seedlings are up and kind of growing, then you could start to spread things around. And some of these organic amendments would be straw, leaves, compost, manures, sawdust, grass clippings. Any of that you can either try to cultivate it in before you actually start to plant, or a combination of both. We'll work it in a little bit at the start, and then when things grow, add some more in as the season goes on, or as the plants get a little taller and can fight their way through the mulch. Usually when I'm cutting the grass, I don't collect the grass clippings. I rake them up. They're a little dry. I spread them through my tomato plants after they've been planted and up a little bit and can kind of fight for themselves for no other reason than just something nice to walk on when I'm picking tomatoes. And then next year, that if you are using any of that organic as a mulch, next year you could work that in at the start, and then during the season add some more mulch, add it again on top. If you don't like mulch, then don't mulch it. Try to work it in beforehand. But organic amendments, they're always decomposing because they are organic, and so they're always going away. They're always depleting themselves. So it's a matter of always adding more every year, or as however often you want to add it. Then there's non-organic amendments, and the big ones are sand and clay. So if you have clay soil, adding sand will help open it up, loosen it up, and allow it to drain and the moisture to work through easier. And if you have sandy soil, adding some clay will do just the opposite to sand. It'll help hold the moisture in and not dry out quite as fast as sand is so noted for. Non-organics, they don't really decompose. They just tend to settle or separate, and they need to be remixed back in. Putting sand into a clay soil, depending how much clay is in there, how heavy it is, you may need a lot of sand to try to loosen it up. But again, depending on the size of your plot, it might not be a problem. As you're growing vegetables and flowers, they're depleting the nutrients in the soil just so that they can grow. And they may need to be replenished. There may not be enough coming in the form of rain and snow and weather and everything else. So of course, the easiest way to replace the nutrients is just commercial granular fertilizer. But I know it's not organic. You may be into the organic. It's just that it is a convenient way of getting it in there in a hurry. And the nutrients that are in the soil, not only do the plants and the vegetables use them, but the nutrients are also helping to decompose the organic material that's in the soil. So everything's working against you a little bit here. And then if you're growing any plants that need anything special, any special needs, very acidic soil or something else, then you're going to have to add specific nutrients just for those. Now, even the organic amendments or these other ones to get nutrients back in, you can either do it over the whole area, or you can just do it around the plants that require it, or along the rows of the vegetables. Both the same with the mulch. If you are mulching, you could just mulch along the side mulch along the carrots or beets or something like that, and not do the whole yard or the whole growing area. Some of the things to add for the nutrients, there's bone and blood meal, or blood meal, I should say, they're not usually mixed. Gypsum, sulfur, limestone, and they'll all do something different. And that may be when you would need a soil test to know whether you're low in something, or it's changed the pH value of your soil. So I know I spoke about mulches, but there are many mulches that are used that are they're not organic, or they're hard to decompose, or they take a long time to decompose. Shredded bark and wood chips, they're using the nutrients out of the soil, nitrogen in particular, to decompose, and so you may be short of that a little bit for some of the other plants that you're trying to grow. Even cocoa bean shells, another popular, or has been a popular mulch at times. Those shells are going to decompose. broken oyster shells or stones, they're not going to decompose because they're hard and they're not going to do anything. Once you have an area covered with mulch, this type of mulch, it can get tough. It can get be a problem trying to get other nutrients into the soil. It's usually thick enough that if you're watering it in, it gets caught and gets soaked up by the mulch and doesn't get down into the ground. You might have to wait. The rains may come and wash it down, but it's just not as easy to get some of the other amendments into the soil. Mulches like shredded bark and wood chips, they may not be as nice in a vegetable garden because you're always planting your seeds or plants into your vegetable garden. They're moving all over the place when you're trying to rotate your crops. And then when you're trying to dig any of your vegetables out, then there's all the mulch they're getting in can be getting in your way as well. So those types of mulches may not be as easy in a vegetable garden. Something more like straw or grass clippings, leaves, they brush away a little easier to be able to do anything. So I guess I sort of got to the end. Any questions that I can try to answer, or something maybe more specific that you were looking for?
That was great. Thanks, Len. I do have a question. We've talked about like eggshells and coffee grinds and stuff. Do you know anything about that? Are those good to use? Like, what do you say about those types of things?
Yeah, no, you can use them. The eggshells are going to add calcium and lime into your soil. The coffee grounds, they're going to decompose, but they're going to open up the soil. If it's in a clayish soil, they'll start to open it up as well. They're kind of gritty, so but they'll eventually deplete.
Perfect. Thank you. Natalie, if you have a question, go ahead.
Thanks. I've been using wood chips for my garden for 2 seasons now. I'm getting into my 3rd. And yes, it is a bit frustrating when dealing with planting because the mulch wants to go in the holes you're making and you're trying to avoid that. And so I would love to potentially look into getting to straw, but I feel like in terms of acquiring mulch, I'm having easier time finding mulch wood chips at places like Lowe's or Home Depot.
True.
Where do you go for straw?
I don't know. Farmers would be a good. Farmers would be a good source.
Yeah.
If you are getting manures that aren't in the bags at the local stores, it'll have quite a bit of straw in it. So anybody that you know that you might know or have contact with into the farming communities, you may try places like, I'm not trying to push anybody in particular, don't get that idea. You're in Brantford, I take it.
Yes.
There's Grandview. I'm not sure the proper name now these days. It used to be Grandview Flour and Feed. It's by the railway station down at the end of the street there. I think that's Wadsworth Street.
Copetown Feed now. Copetown Feed.
I'll need to write that down.
I don't.
Copetown feed by the train station.
Well, it's right at the end. You're gonna run right into it. He may have a source. He may know of where you might be able to find it. I'm not sure if someplace like Walters would know where you could get some or not. The big box stores, they have a lot of supplies, but they're reliant on prepackaged things. And the only other thing would be to find it in the fall around Thanksgiving, October, Thanksgiving, Halloween.
Right.
You'll see bales of straw around. Another place you may find, I don't know whether you would or not, would be well, it's Pate's. They're on Powerline Road, kind of at the end of Brentwood Park Road.
Brentwood Farms, is that what you mean?
Brentwood Farms, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I should know that name. They're right next door to me here, but there's also Brant View, and I'm out here. But yeah, Brentwood Farms. They might know where you can get some, or might get some for you.
Okay, thanks.
As I say, ask around friends and family that know somebody on a farm. You might be able to get some that way.
Okay.
There were some
If you do
suggestions
get
in the
it-
chat, Natalie, if you want to check that out too, where to get some straw. Ken, if you have a question, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, thanks, and great presentation, Len. My question was more about working the soil. So we have a large garden. We got compost this year, which I've distributed through the garden. And I learned, I think a couple of years ago, that, rototilling the soil wasn't good. So do I have to do I mix it in? Do I just leave the compost on top? How do I do that?
I'm an old fart here, so I still rototill. So that's how I get it distributed. I have heard where people don't like rototilling nowadays. I guess it's about the same as some farmers might still be plowing, and some go to a no-till type of situation. So if you're not going to use a rototiller, forking it in, trying to fork it over, I don't really know of anything else to try to turn it over other than something like rototilling or a lot of work by hand.
So does it need, I guess that was my question, is does it need to be worked in? Can it be left on the top?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. You could leave it on top. The worms will take it down in. We have a lot of leaves. I spread a lot of leaves every year, and by middle of July, you'd never hardly know there was any leaves in the soil, because I'm hoping it's the worms that have digested them all. So, and pulled them down in after working it up. It'll be like Natalie said, she has a problem trying to plant rows of vegetables, and the wood chips keep falling in the row. So you may have a little bit of a problem there. But as the summer goes on, and you're probably cultivating for weeds and keeping the soil loose, the compost will work itself in.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Len. There's a couple questions in the chat. I believe it's Kay. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She's asking, what would you recommend for granular fertilizer?
You can just use a general purpose one like a 777 or a 10-10-10. You don't have to be as careful these days. You wouldn't want anything that was like a weed and feed that for your lawn. And even lawn fertilizer sometimes is the cost for lawn fertilizer seems to be more so than just a general purpose fertilizer. But I have no recommendations of brands. It's all pretty much the same.
Okay, thank you. And then Megan asked, how does crop rotation benefit soil?
Sometimes it's not so much the benefit to the soil as it is to the plants. And if there's any pests or diseases that developed in the plants, I don't know, say the tomato plants one year and they were on the left side of your garden, and next year or this year you put the tomatoes on the right side of your garden, some of that those diseases may not carry over. It's very difficult in a small garden. It's a little easier to do crop rotation in bigger gardens, but some pests do winter over in the soil and you can't see them. Some plants do help the soil. Peas will add nitrogen to the soil, and their roots help with breaking up the soil a bit. So moving them around helps, but I know it's difficult in small gardens to move things around, and you find a good spot for something to grow, and you think, boy, we should keep putting it there. We get a good crop. And you can, it just would mean you'd have to maybe start to add some more nutrients and amenities into the whole garden.